Well, hello and welcome, Power Partners, to our informational barnyard and playground, Starstyle, Be the Star You Are, brought to the airwaves under the auspices of Be the Star You Are charity. I am your host, Cynthia Brian, and we are broadcasting on Voice America Media. This is the Empowerment Channel. We have a really fun show for you today because I have a special guest coming up in segment one, Jack Bialik, with his new book, Lost in Time, Our Forgotten and Vanishing Knowledge. And it is so fascinating and very pertinent for what's happening in our world at the moment. So you want to really stay tuned to that. The miracle moment for today brought to you by Be the Star You Are. Please visit Be the Star You Are at btsya.org. It was written by Seneca. It is not because life is difficult that we do not dare. Life is difficult because we do not dare. So think about it. It is a good one. Well, Jack Bialik is an electrical engineer. It seems like his life is very exciting. He has worked for the Air Force, Motorola. He contributed to the White House efforts in Haiti. And now he has been dedicating his time to exploring how human knowledge is lost and what we can do to preserve it for future generations. He has this great book out, Lost in Time, Our Forgotten and Vanishing Knowledge. And I have it so marked up that there's no way we're going to get to all the questions. But welcome, Jack, to Star Style. Be the star you are.
Well, thank you so much, Cynthia. Glad to be here.
Yeah, well, I was really excited to read your book, and as I said, it's so marked up. I mean, I was a history major, so I was really very fascinated with this. But I kind of want to start at the end because we were talking about you're talking about extinction, and you had a chapter called "A Time in the Bottle" at the end of the book, and talking about time capsules. And this one really grabbed my mind because 2 years ago was the 50th anniversary of the little town where I am in. And it was the 25th anniversary of Be the Star You Are. And we were invited to be part of a time capsule that will be
Oh,
opened on the centennial. I won't be here, but the teens who put things into the time capsule promise that they're going to come back in 50 years and see it. But I wanted starting again from the back. Um, can you just in a time capsule tell us why is it that there are these time capsules that are being buried or put into space or whatever it is, but they're not going to be open for thousands of years because what you chronicle in the book is how, there have been throughout time all these tablets and things that have been um, keeping the lists of knowledge of the world, but have been lost. They've been lost in time. So, is there a way that we're going to be able to prevent it? Because, as you said, right now, our computer systems aren't going to be the same. And we went from floppy disks to CDs to what do we have now? I don't even know. We have
USB
yeah,
drives. And, yeah.
USB drives and
Uh,
we put USB drives in that time capsule. But then I said, well, we also have to put in a computer that can read it, you
yeah.
know? And I found that so fascinating because not that many people have things in their attics or basements that are going to be able to read the things that we have today. And my big fear is that all the photographs that we have been taking, all these people taking on their phones, that nobody's going to be able to see them in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. That is a bit of a quandary. What are people going to do in the future? We tend to think about the future being, maybe 10 years from now or 50 years from now. But what are people going to do 100 or 1,000 years from now to try to read or find or interpret what we've done? And, a common maybe misconception, I don't even think it's a misconception. I just think it's something we don't think about, is that our electronic media has a very short lifespan. I
It
mean,
does.
you know, a CD, DVD lasts 30, 40 years. The pits inside of it oxidize and you won't be able to read it. The other day, I was looking for some pictures and I had a bunch of thumb drives, I had 8 of them. And I was going through those, trying to find these pictures. And out of the 8, only 6 of them worked.
I know that, that isn't that the conundrum?
Yeah.
It made me think again when I was reading your book, Lost in Time, a few years ago, I transferred all the VHS,
Mm.
remember our VHSs, videos of my children and family things from when they were young to CDs. And it took me a very long time, and I bought the whole equipment and I did it and it was fabulous and everybody loved it. And now I don't know if anybody could ever watch those CDs
Yeah.
because the people don't have the CD or DVD players, because now everything is streamed.
Right.
So if
Yeah.
things are, it's like it's planned obsolescence almost. But then what you talk about in Lost in Time is how paper, the same thing, like, the gas station, you gave the example of a gas
Yeah.
station receipt that we get a receipt, but within, if it's in sunlight, it turns black. Whereas tablets from 4,000 BC can still be read if you can figure out the hieroglyphics or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we think that we are so evolved, but the reality is we might be losing more of our history now than what our ancestors did.
Yeah, it's a real conundrum, I'll say. Those stone tablets last for thousands of years, yet the data density is not, I mean, there isn't very much information on one of those tablets.
Right.
And today we've got these devices where we save information and it's very dense. You can put a tremendous amount of information on just a small USB drive or thumb drive or on a SSD drive. Yet the lifespan of those devices is very short. How long does your computer last? 5, 10 years. Those little drives, they're not going to last any longer than that. They're all made out of electronics.
Yes, and
So, yeah,
and you were just saying how your flash drives, that only a couple of them worked when you were looking for your photos.
yeah,
I do still have a CD and a DVD player because I wanted to maintain these. I have an acting background and I have a lot of television shows and all kinds of things, that have been moved from different um, modems, I guess you would say, different kinds of things. But I put several of the DVDs and CDs in, and the same thing. Couldn't
yeah,
read them. They
yeah.
were unreadable. I have no idea. They looked fine. They've been in cool, dark places, but they're not readable. And that's not that old.
Yep, yep. And that really is the point of the book. If you get to the last chapter, the point is really that I'm trying to raise awareness so that people think about it and
Yes.
think about what you have and how you want to store it. What's the best way? If you want it to go, if you have a family and you want it to go to future generations, think about it. How do you want to save it? I interviewed the curator at the Computer History Museum near San Francisco, and he told me that what they do, they have these old IBM XT and PC,
Right, because it's near Silicon Valley, right?
yeah, yeah, all these old computers with floppy drives. And what they have to do is print the information on paper because those drives get brittle and break and don't work anymore.
You know,
So, yeah,
so with all your expertise and all this knowledge you have from writing your book and talking about our bright future or our future in general, do you have a recommendation for
yeah.
how are we going to remember and record this for posterity?
Yeah. Well, I definitely have some recommendations for all your listeners. Something they can do. First of all, they have to think about it, if this
Right?
is something they really want to save or not, and then think about how they want to save it. And you can use redundancy. You can have put it in multiple places if it's important to you or to your family or to the future, or maybe even, print it on paper if it's an important photo or some something you think that others would want to know about, maybe some emails or whatever it is, but you just have to be thoughtful is the point. And
Yes,
I always
thoughtful.
said
Good
humble,
word.
be humble, and think about the past, think about the future, and think wide, think about other people. And I'd also like to say that we need to think about it as a global village, as a global culture. Think about what we're doing with knowledge. In Baghdad during the Iraq War, we lost millions of artifacts because of the war.
Hmm.
And it was done by everybody. It was both sides. I mean, the soldiers going in there and the bombs that went in, that destroyed artifacts. And so did the people that lived there. They destroyed and stole things. But, uh, you know, we just need to think about it in the big picture and think about the future of humanity, really.
We lose so much through warfare, as you just stated, and my heart always breaks when you see especially
Yeah.
now, you see the devastation in the Middle East or wherever there is war going on. And I think about all the history and the people and the lives and the culture that was there. But also, we lose things. We're going to lose more through climate change, and we're losing it, as you say, volcanoes. And what is the end of the world? Fires and floods and you talk about all of these things in Lost in Time, your book, because again, being thoughtful about how do we save things, how do we preserve it. I loved how you talked about some of the ancient um, arts that have been discovered. Like, I would have never thought about dentistry, that it was described as toothworms in a Sumerian text from 5000 BC. I was, that toothworms were a
Yeah.
cause of dental decay. I mean, I don't know. We think about our modern medicine, and I hadn't ever really stopped to think about that many years ago. I mean, we're talking BC, 5000 BC, that they were talking about dentistry, but we wouldn't even know about it if
No.
things hadn't been found in, archaeological digs.
Yeah. Yeah. And we have so many examples of it. I was just really surprised when I was doing the research. This book took 10 years to make.
Mm.
And cataract surgery, we started doing it in the 1700s, modern cataract surgery. But, Shashruta, a physician in India, did uh, cataract surgery in 800 BC.
Yeah,
And we,
that was another one. I mean,
yeah,
the medical things really got me. That was so, I mean, so much. Again, we always think of ourselves as being so highly intelligent and very technologically advanced. And I know I always think, oh gosh, how great that we have modern plumbing. But then you talk about in your book how, the toilets were around.
oh, yeah,
The whole plumbing system and sewer system. You just don't think about those things as being thousands and thousands of years ago.
yeah.
So, one of the things that really hit me, because being an author, you're an author, I'm an author, and Be the Star You Are is a literacy charity. You
Oh,
talked about the first libraries being from 4100 BC, um, or 3300 BC, somewhere in there. To think that there were libraries then, they're very different than what we have now, but there was the art of writing. And you wrote that it was believed to have been invented in ancient Sumer between, as I said, the 4100 BC, and then numbers were invented long before that. Do we ever stop to think about that? And how many articles have been written, how many books have been written, and how much has been lost because civilizations have burned books or banned books or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, all those are great examples. Just simple things we don't really, what's in front of us, but we don't really think about it. I'll give you a good example. The number zero, right?
Yes,
We think the number zero has been around a long time. Well, it really hasn't. The Romans did not
didn't
use the
have a
number
zero.
zero. You can't write the number zero in Roman numerals.
No,
There's no zero.
no, no.
So they didn't use zero. So, I mean, I think they had the concept of it, but they didn't really, you know, use it specifically. It's interesting how we go through these cycles where we have some piece of knowledge and then we lose it, like we know about toilets in 3000 BC, and then in the Middle Ages in Europe, we don't use toilets and we have
At
sewage
all.
running off the top of buildings and into the streets. And then, we find toilets again. So, all these are important things that we need to have a good quality of life. That's why we keep reinventing them because we
Well,
need them. We need them
when
to
you,
live.
in doing your research, what did you take away from all of this? That there's nothing new in reality. I mean, when I read your book, I kept thinking, wow, there really isn't too much new. Yes, we're on our way to Mars or the moon or something, but it's not like, other cultures weren't looking at that. I mean, there's so many things. What did you take away from your whole experience? Because we do have so many vanishing well, there are many vanished cultures, and we don't want to be one of them, but chances are we will be.
Yeah. Well, that possibility always exists. Of course, it's up to us to make the right decisions. I do talk in there about the difference between knowledge and wisdom,
Hmm.
and how wisdom is the proper application of knowledge and how it comes with experience. And I think in a way, what's going on is this is a way for humanity to grow and to make these mistakes so that we can learn from them. I mean, the history is only good for one thing. There's only one thing that history is good for, and this is personal or, global. It's only good to learn from because you can't
Hmm.
change it, you can't do anything about it, but you can learn from it. So I think hopefully, I mean, the point is that we learn from these mistakes that we've done over and over again. We found batteries in 2000 years ago in Baghdad, and then we lost them again, and now we got batteries again. Uh, can we just stop doing that to ourselves, where we lose information and then we have to find it again?
So that's your call to action, pretty much, is
Yeah.
that we have to be more curious and more careful and more caring.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And what do you think? Can individuals do to add to that preservation of knowledge, to gain wisdom, and have the experiences in their daily lives? What do you think the future will look like?
Yeah, I think as we continue to get wiser, I'll say, you
Let's
know,
hope.
yeah. I mean, it's not just about getting more information. I mean, that's kind of what happens today. We save more and more and more
It's almost
information.
too much information, right?
Yeah, it's
We better have more wisdom.
information overload. So
Yes.
we're going to have to get really smart to be able to use that information wisely. Otherwise, we'll go down the wrong path, down the rat hole or whatever you want to call it, and end up in a place we'll go, wow, how did we get here? This is awful.
Mm.
We got to start all over again. So I think if people, I mentioned a little bit ago, stay humble, be
Hmm.
open to new ideas, be open to old ideas. I mean, there's old things
I
that
like the idea of being open to old ideas because
yeah,
I do have this gut feeling that, everything old is new again.
yeah. Yeah.
So, we do need to look at the past, embrace the past, take from it the positive ideas and thoughts, and perhaps improve them or, work on them.
Yeah.
Well, this is just a fascinating trip through time in our world. And as I said, there's so much in your book. I can see it could take 10 years. I'm surprised it didn't take 50 years to write this. But let's give out your website, and everything will be posted on all of
Mhm.
our different websites, as well as wherever anybody listens to their podcasts. They'll be able to get the LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, all of that. But you can go to lostintime.world,
Yeah.
and the book is called Lost in Time: Our Forgotten and Vanishing Knowledge. And it's by Jack Bialik. And that's spelled Bialik. Do you have a ending word or sentence or whatever you would like to tell our listeners to help preserve the future?
Yeah. Well, just s- stay humble. Think about the past. Think about the future. Think wide. Think about the people next to you, on either side of you and further out. And also think long, think long into the future. Think long into the past so that way, you'll be in a good position when you're in a position where you can make a decision to help others out. That will help you to make the right decision.
Oh, see, I like that. I think the more we help others, we help ourselves. And I think that's a beautiful way to live. Well, I thank you so much, Jack, for coming on the show. And I also, if you do bury a time capsule, try to mark where it is for the future so that they'll be able to find it. This has been the book. Lost in Time by Jack Bialik. I'm Cynthia Brian. You're listening to Starstyle, Be the Star You Are. We'll be right back after a business bite, and we're going to talk about the shape of the American family. Don't go away. Well, we want to have some success at both work and home because studies show that optimistic people outperform pessimistic people in every area of business, wealth, and family life. So, research also shows that 50% of your self talk is negative. So, maybe it's time to start talking to yourself rather than listening to yourself and make it positive. Focus on the good and the positive thoughts. Reject the bad and the negative thoughts. The young man said to the wise man, I have two dogs fighting inside of me, the negative and the positive. How do I know which will win? And the wise man said, the one you feed will win. So think about that and don't hang around negative people because they'll impact you more than you will impact them. Life is like a bus. You have to decide to be the driver of your bus. Stop letting others control your future. Decide to take control of your life. You are the star of your own performance. Turn your passions into profits. I'm Cynthia Brian with another business bite from Starstyle. For more information, visit cynthiabrian.com. That's Brian with an I.com. Well, we're back. I'm Cynthia Brian, and that was a fascinating interview with Jack Bialik. The book Lost in Time really, really gives you a lot of insight into the past and the possibilities for our future. So I really highly recommend that you take a peek at it. I want to talk about the American family. I was reading Worthwhile, and I we did a show already about living solo, But the American family has changed. In the 1970s, 67% of Americans aged 25 to 49 were living with a spouse and had at least one child under the age of 16. That's according to the Pew Research Center, 67%. Today, that number is just 37%. And meanwhile, every other family structure, collaborating couples, single person households, blended families, unpartnered people with children, same sex unions, everything else is increased. So we have a lot of shifting societal norms, and there's broader definitions of care, economic realities, and longer lifespans. And this has all transformed how we live life today. So it's evolution, and it brings about new considerations. More Americans are living without the traditional support of spouses or children, and that really means planning ahead is very important. Community resources and broader circles of care play a key role in helping people secure their well-being for years ahead. So there's a lot of contributing factors. The diversification of the family structure is rooted in a growing cultural movement towards self actualization and the increasing acceptance of non traditional life choices. Again, according to Pew Research, fewer people view marriage and parenthood as central to a fulfilling life, just 23% and 26%, respectively. And that's significant when compared to the 71% who prioritized having a career they enjoy and 61% who cited close friendships. So, beyond changing personal priorities, societal forces have played a role in reshaping all of American households. There's a lot of economic pressures. We're all experiencing it now. Housing is expensive, childcare, and those are all deterrents for having children. And gone are the days of a mom and a dad and 2.5 children. Today's fertility rates are way down. It's around here in the US about 1.6. I don't know how you have a zero point 0.6 child, but when you average it all out, that's how it turns out. And the shifts aren't just cultural, they're also technological and societal. There's a lot of advances in reproductive technology, and there's an increase in LGBTQ families, which have opened new paths for creating family. And there's no longer a single dominant model. Instead, people just are building support systems and household structures that are going to reflect their own values and their own circumstances. So the practical implications mean that modern household trends and that aging solo that we had spoken about before are connected, and they both reflect a shift away from the traditional norms of marriage and child rearing. As fewer people marry and have children, the rise of single person households is expanding. Now, traditional models assumed built-in caregiving from spouses or children, but today's support systems don't have those defined roles. Responsibilities aren't necessarily expected or explicit. And according to the US Census data, 1/3 of Americans age 55 to 74, and half of those that are 75 and older, they all live alone. And experts predict that this trend is going to continue as marriage and fertility rates drop. So in the past, it might not have been intentional to live alone, but today people are choosing it. And it is going to require, strategies for housing, healthcare, social support. And it is important to consider what this kind of lifestyle may mean. And the independence and flexibility, of course, affords the freedom to launch a second act career or a third act career, to relocate to a new city or even a new country, and maybe to even have a really terrific hobby. But it also has practical considerations around care and well being, like maintaining social connections while living alone and identifying who can be counted on in the event of a health crisis. So, most individuals can lean on communities that they already value. A lot of them are church oriented, community organizations, volunteer organizations, clubs, And that keeps people social and engaged. And of course, embracing technology can also help maintain connections that are made throughout life. So family hasn't disappeared, it's just being redefined. And the American household looks a lot different today. And those changes are happening on a daily basis. And we have changes about care and connection. So as old roles fade and new household dynamics take shape, we just have to plan ahead. Whether you're raising kids, sharing life with a partner, or navigating aging solo, it takes thought, it takes intention, it takes caring. And strong networks and community support are mattering more than ever because now family is less about structure and it's more about the people who show up for you. And that is something that we should be very excited about. Well, that is our show for today. I thank you so much for joining me here on Starstyle Be the Star You Are. I always love it when I have an expert in studio because you're going to get so much new information, and Lost in Time will give you my gosh, it's a history lesson and also a lesson for the future. For more information about Star Style Productions or to get any of my books, you can visit cynthiabrian.com. If you're interested in making a donation to Be the Star You Are charity, you can visit bethestarur.org. Or again, you can just do the letters btsya.org. My aim is always to encourage, inspire, inform, amuse, and motivate. See beyond your physical being. Know you are already the star you dreamed of becoming. Cherish the past, dream of the future, but celebrate each moment of your life because we don't want to be lost in time. And if you read a book this week, go and find Jack Bialik's book, Lost in Time. And until next week, when we are playing again in the Star Style Barnyard, remember that love always wins, kindness always prevails, and smiles will keep us happy. I'm Cynthia Brian for Star Style, encouraging you to be kind, be inclusive, tell the truth, live with integrity, embrace cultures, love unconditionally, encourage others, be generous, read, lead, succeed, communicate, collaborate, innovate, and most of all, be your unapologetically authentic self because everyone counts. And we will see you next week. So until then, go out into the world and be the star you are. Thank you so much for joining me here on Star Style